What country is this car from?
It no longer exists.
Nice.
What did it make?
It's 1985. You're living in East Germany. You applied for a vehicle voucher or whatever, and the acting Ministry of Occupying Transportation Overseas, whatever, granted your request for a vehicle. Your vehicle will be available for collection in 3 to 5 years. Do you get to choose your vehicle? No. Here it is. Your vehicle will be a Trabant. All glory to the Hypnotoad. It's a Trabant or nothing. Manufactured with almost no changes from the 1960s to the fall of the wall, the two-cylinder 600cc two-stroke premix air-cooled Trabant was the defining car of Cold War East Germany. It has a 4-speed manual transmission that's on the column, which would be fine if it made sense. But it doesn't.
So, yeah, it's on its side.
Yep, it's backwards from like a standard American column shift.
I've forgotten everything again. So let's try this again.
All right, so
I'm in the middle.
You're in the middle. You straight down from where you are is first.
One.
Straight up from there is second.
Okay, now let me reorient myself.
Okay.
Middle. Down's first.
Down is first.
Up is second.
Up is second. Down to the middle, towards you and down is third. And straight up from there is fourth.
Oh, this is completely backwards. So, okay.
Yep, completely backwards.
Loose. Down to second.
First.
What did I say?
Second.
Right, because that's where second is.
That's where second should be.
Down to first.
Down to first.
Up to second. Back down third.
Yep.
Up for fourth.
Up for fourth.
Okay, so if I think mirror image.
Mirror image, and be very, the best thing I've told people is be very deliberate with your shifts. Make your moves, like between gears, very deliberate. Whereas instead of kind of trying to slosh them from side to side, just be kind of click and then boop, boop, boop. It shifts better that way.
All right, and we get to go up Mount St. Helens.
Excellent. Let's do that.
Whoa, the brakes. You weren't kidding about those.
I wasn't kidding about them.
Holy moly, we got to go down this hill. Okay, push in, but not to reverse.
There you go.
There's first.
There's first. That's the exhaust rattling.
What was that? I've got a flashing light there. Oh, that's my turn signal.
That's your blinker.
There's third, and I think we're probably with this hill, we're going to stay in third.
Third would be a good gear for it.
Yeah.
Just make sure you stay on the gas.
All right, on gas.
The coast, you can just throw the clutch in.
Okay. All right, we're almost at 60 kilometers an hour. Maybe some fourth gear action.
Fourth.
All right.
Now in fourth, you can let off the gas. It will freewheel and the engine will return to idle.
Okay.
And if you let off and then get back on it, like wait like 2 seconds and then get back on it, you can feel the engine do that, and where it catches.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting feeling.
Huh.
It is not the worst car I've ever driven, because I was expecting this to be terrible. Worst is still the Oldsmobile Bravada. That sucks. I understand the 26 horsepower engine. I understand the ride-on mower-sized fuel tank. What I didn't understand was how a car this light, with Duroplast body panels, has such pathetic brakes. And you can't compression brake in it because it's a two-stroke. If I downshifted on these downhills, the two-cylinder would rev high, but without throttle, no fuel is being delivered to the cylinder. And crankcase. No fuel on a two-stroke also means no oil. No oil means no lubrication. No lube means dry friction. Dry friction means... The only way to descend hills in a Trabant and not gas it down a hill is to shift into fourth. Fourth is the only gear, it has a freewheeling function in fourth. So you get to go down a hill and ride the crappy brakes that you don't have. So who would voluntarily just drive one of these things around in the United States? This guy.
You have a 1990 Trabant 601S. It was built in East Germany. It's actually one of the last 601Ss ever built. 1990 was the last year, and this car was built in April of 90, and they ceased production in May of 90.
How did you come to obtain this?
I actually bought it from a fellow who lives near Seattle. He collects old Soviet and Russian and other Soviet Eastern Bloc cars, and he sells a few of them, and I had always wanted one of these, and I saw that he had one for sale, and so I just I jumped on it. I have had it for about 2 years. I got it in 2020.
And what interests you about this car so much that you just had to have it?
A big interesting thing about it is the history of the car, because I find Cold War history and Soviet history to be very interesting, and this is an iconic vehicle, and I'm a car guy, so this is an iconic vehicle that goes right along with that, and kind of the idea of driving something like this when it's your only choice. You don't have choices in vehicles, you get this or nothing. This is going to sound very vain, but my favorite thing about it is the attention it gets. I love that. That's kind of a side note. I do really enjoy driving it. I find it a really fun, sort of visceral experience to drive it. Probably my least favorite thing about it is it's one of the nicest cars I've ever owned, and I'm always afraid about scratching it or hurting it. That and trying to get parts for it can be a real pain. They still make almost every part for the car, but you have to order them from Germany and wait a considerable amount of time to get them.
Have you had to do any major repairs since you've owned it?
I have not, actually. I've only done maintenance. I've done spark plugs, belt, tires. I've really not had to do anything to it. It's due for some work because the guy I got it from never drove it. He just kept it in a shipping container, whereas I frequently drive this car. So it's
Not just a show car.
It's not just a show car. I drive it to the store. It's not a trailer queen, despite what it, is showing off today.
What typical reactions do you get when people who know what you have?
Who know what I have? It's either, oh my God, is that a Trabant? Or why? Why did you buy one of these? I have spoken to a couple of German people, and they told me, like, do you remember these from when we were children? They were awful. Why do you have one? But the other reaction is from people who don't know what it is frequently, that thing is adorable, what is it? And then I get to, do the nerd thing of the actually, and tell them all about it, which is fantastic. The longest I probably drove it was, I used to have about a 40-mile commute to work one way, and so I drove it to work and back a few times, but that's the farthest I've ever taken it from home under its own power, is about 40 miles.
What is the gas mileage?
Terrible. It's actually quite bad. It only has a 6 or 7 gallon gas tank, and I think on average it seems to get like in the low 20s, maybe the high teens, which is really pathetic considering the car only has a 2-cylinder engine. I love the simplicity of the car because it is very easy to fix with very basic tools. There's no pumps in the car of any kind. It doesn't have any engine oil. It doesn't have it doesn't even have a fuel pump. It doesn't have a water pump. It's air cooled. It's really fun because it's a 2-stroke engine, so it smokes like a chainsaw when you drive it, and it's a column shifted 4-speed, so it's it's got this little stub of a shifter, and you drive it, and the pedals aren't in front of you; they're off to the side, so you kind of sit with your legs cocked.
You want to show some of this?
Sure. So if you look, the wheel well is right here, so the pedals are actually off to the side because the clutch is here and the gas pedal's that stub way over there. Doesn't even have a fuel gauge.
No fuel gauge.
No fuel gauge. It has one gauge, and that's the speedometer. And that's it. No temp gauge, no fuel gauge, nothing.
So you really have to baby it.
Yep, and if you want to, the gas tank's under the hood, and if you want to check the gas, you have to open the tank and actually look down inside. It's supposed to have a dipstick, but I don't have the dipstick for it. And you have to mix the gas and oil like you would for a weed whacker or a chainsaw.
Oh, wow.
So you put the gas in the tank, and then once you've got how many gallons you've gotten, you go back here to your trunk and you get your 2-stroke oil, and you mix it for a 50-to-1 mixture. And then, I know it's probably unnecessary, but I will often shake the car to mix it and then drive off. And people see you at the gas station, as soon as they see you put the fuel nozzle under the hood, they tend to freak out. I had one person actually go up to the attendant and say, I don't think that guy knows what he's doing. He's pumping gas onto the top of his engine. And the attendant's like, I don't think so, but I'll go talk to him. And the attendant actually came over to me and was like, sir, and looked down and saw the gas tank. They're like, have a great day. And they walked off. I have been accused of being a communist because I own it. That happened at a gas station once. Someone in a very large pickup came up to me and accused me of being a communist because I own it, which was like, okay, dude, you do you. I think the other one was about a week or two after I got it. First time I took it to town, I had just gotten it licensed and insured. I took it to town. I went to the local Costco gas station in town, and I pulled in, and I'm gassing it up, and this one guy comes over, starts talking to me about it. I'm talking to him, and it's great. And then another guy comes over, and then another gal comes over, and then another gal comes over, and suddenly there were like 15 people gathered around this car. I couldn't get it away from the pump. The attendant from the gas station was one of the people who was there. And I had questions coming, and it was like rapid fire, but they were coming from here and here and here and back here, and I'd answer this guy and then answer this guy, and it's like, poof. That was an experience I had never ever had. It was fun though.
I bet it's a source of pride.
It is. Seeing the product of my vanity right here, it's. If you push this car really, really hard, it'll go like 62 miles an hour. And I mean, that is pushing it, and it is unhappy with you. The engine is screaming. It likes to cruise about 45, 50. It's pretty happy there. 35 is probably its really happy speed. But yeah, it'll go that fast, but it is grumpy about it. It's there's a fair bit of wind noise. There's quite a bit of road noise. The engine makes quite a racket. Because being a two-stroke, it kind of pops and farts, and the exhaust rattles. So whenever you come to a stop, it does this thing, and it's like, it's just so noisy. You try to have a conversation inside, and it's just a lost cause. You can't. I mean, it doesn't even have a blower motor for the heater. The heater is you only get air through the car if the car's moving. It just has this big tube that comes from the grill and goes into the cabin, and that's how you get heat. And because it's an air-cooled engine, it has a giant fan on the side of the motor, and when you rev the engine up, it blows the heated air into that tube, and then the air pushes it into the car. And so if you're coming down the road and you come to a stop, you'll lose your heat. You won't have heat until you start going again. But they built them this way. That they made this exact same car, except for a few minor styling changes, from 1962 to 1990, and it never changed. Same engine, same transmission, same basic design of the car. That's communism. It was good enough, so they kept making it. And I guess one other interesting feature is all the body panels on this car are made out of a material that's called Duroplast. It's very similar to fiberglass, but it's actually made from resin mixed with, and I'm not making this up, cotton. So it's actually made out of, the original ones were made out of old military uniforms that were ground up and pressed with resin at high heat to make this kind of weird that. The frame's metal, but all the body panels are this sort of, it's called Duroplast. Actually, the trunk lid is a good, how it's kind of wobbly. Mm-hmm. All the body panels are made, and all the body panels on the car are glued to it. None of them are screwed on. They're all have this weird adhesive that glues them to the car, which is odd. Like I said, I think the only fluids it contains in the car is the brake fluid, the gas, and the brake fluid, the gas, and the washer fluid. That's the only fluids it has.
The Trabant, or Trabant, is a car that represents an ideology designed to fail. The notion that you have no choice but that which we provide. So be thankful you're on a waiting list at all, even if it takes a decade to see the inside of a car with no power. Not even the power to disappoint. Because there's nothing to anticipate from the rusted ladder of gears and fatalism. Oh yeah, and an odometer was offered as an option. And East Germans had to drive this for years for want of better options. And that's only among those who are lucky enough to get them. You see, it could even take more than a decade from the time this car was ordered until you finally received it. Hell, in some cases, working-class citizens were placed on waiting lists as long as 13 years, which led to pandemonium on the used car market. The immediate availability of a used Trabant made it a prized commodity, so they were commanding higher prices than new models. Some as high as double. This despite the car rarely changing at all over much of its lifespan, from its founding to the fall of the Eastern Bloc. Basically, the Trabant 601 was introduced in 1963 as the People's Car of East Germany, or the German Democratic Republic. a part of East Germany that was occupied by the Soviets. It was manufactured by the East German automaker, the name I can't pronounce and will not try. And the idea with the Trabant was to offer you something that you could depend on for not a whole lot of money. The trade-off, of course, being that it was unglamorous and not particularly refined, but maintenance and repair, at least relative to other cars of the time, was intended to be easy enough for the average citizen to perform themselves. A modern-day lawnmower that you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's is more complex than this. But with the Trabant, you had a means of extraction for East Germans, who would drive a route from Hungary to Czechoslovakia as a path to West Germany. It was known as the Trabi Trail because it involved packing up as much as a Trabant could hold to make the journey. Granted, they could only enter West Germany once they received a special permission to drive their Trabant through, since this vehicle did not meet West German emission standards. And why would it? You could set fire to a pile of Sega Game Gears and that would pollute less than this car. The Trabant produced 4 to 5 times the pollution of the average car. This is basically an East Germany Tata Nano, a car with basement-level function and style that calls to mind the same lack of effort you get from a junior high administrator planning the spring formal. This year's theme is the music of Steve Winwood. So much has been written about the history of this period that it almost loses track that the society of this era is far less interesting than the stories and struggles of the individual. The tales of daily life, of escape, of defection, of persistence in the face of a changing geopolitical landscape. There can be no more modernist a notion than that of the individual trying to keep ahead of a world that is growing more and more unfamiliar, more hostile. The present is brought into stark relief in comparison with the past, so that an abstraction of the familiar takes root. Things become more new, more challenging, in its break from the safety of tradition. And this is how we end up with a car that subordinates individualism beneath a monopolistic representation of the state. A bland attempt at style and experimentation is presented to fulfill the modernist prerequisite to cast aside old forms. Trabant 601S, the car equivalent of Krusty the Clown screening Worker and Parasite. And yet there was style. In the face of a bureaucratic boot heel, the people who designed the Trabant initially still desired style art. There's no reason for this grille to be here. It's an air-cooled car. There's only 2 holes underneath this. One for the quote-unquote heater, and, the other for an air intake. That's it. But they put a grille here anyway. The taillights could have just been off of a lorry, but they tried to make some Cadillac-esque, maybe Austin Healey style taillights, something that looked nice. Yes, we are oppressed, but we will still create art. Call it the human spirit. Call it artistic expression. This could have been a box to fit government requirements like a Grumman LLV. But no, the designers of the Trabant wanted hope. Yes, the car pollutes. Yes, it's terrible to drive. Yes, it's unsafe. Yes, it's overpriced. Yes, it's this or nothing. But we will try to find a sunny day. We will try to make something pleasant to look at. Something happy. Something cute. A beautiful object to gaze upon in a cruel world. I put this up with the Volkswagen Karmann Ghia as one of the most beautiful little cars ever made. It's beautiful in its defiance. The Trabant 601S represents humanity's determinism to keep moving forward.